Without that piece, the meteorite lays dormant. I'll not be able to merge the dimensions. Where is it?
The plumbers took it.
Plumbers.
Plumber alert.
Plumber alert.
That's right, the Koopa Man is looking for a couple of plumbers. And there's a big coin reward, 2,000 gold Koopa coins. Guess he must have a serious plumbing problem.
Directed by Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, Super Mario Bros. Came to the big screen in May of 1993. The first ever video game turned into a live-action movie. Being impressed by the trailers and having that familiar excitement of another popular medium being brought to live action, I eagerly went to the show to see this one upon its release, at the time being 10 years old, and it was a movie I really enjoyed. So as the years went on, I continued to like this movie and never heard anything bad about it at all. To me, it was just the Mario Brothers movie, and that was that. There was no negative stigma attached to it as there is today. When internet became a thing, it allowed people to express their views and opinions on anything they wanted to a mass audience. And critiquing and reviewing movies is now one of the biggest forms of community expression you can find online. In the wake of this, I found out Super Mario Bros. Was very much disliked by a general audience, and today is even considered the worst video game adaptation there is, if not one of the worst movies ever made. I was a little surprised by this, to be honest, but at the same time I could understand the reasons behind it. This movie is very silly and didn't really provide a Super Mario-esque style, but even so my opinion was never changed, and to this day I still like the movie, and I think it did a reasonable job bringing the Super Mario games to real life. Unless you were born yesterday, you know what Super Mario Bros. Is. It started as a classic side-scroller that launched 4 very popular games in the late 80s and early 90s, and the Mario franchise continued non-stop to this day with a countless amount of games. Mario himself is the icon of Nintendo, and pretty much the most well-known video game character there is. When playing the 4 original classics, all you're doing is moving from level to level, world to world, jumping on enemies, collecting coins, mushrooms, extra lives, basically getting from point A to point B in an obstacle course of unique environments and interesting enemies. As a video game, it's immensely satisfying, hence its popularity, but story-wise there's pretty much nothing there. The main premise is to get to the very last level being King Bowser's castle and saving Princess Peach. That's pretty much it. So how exactly does one go about turning that into a live-action movie? Bob Hoskins stars as Mario, and to be honest, there probably couldn't have been a more perfect person to play this role. Even people who absolutely hated this movie agree that Hoskins had a very decent portrayal. In an interview, Hoskins once said that Super Mario Bros. Was the worst thing he has ever done in his career, due to the frustrating pace of production and the directors he referred to as arrogant rather than talented. Despite this, he does the best he can do and truly seems to be putting a lot into the character, creating a very charming and likable real-life Mario. Luigi is played by John Leguizamo. He portrays a much younger Luigi as opposed to the game, a 20-plus year age difference between him and his brother. John also does a good job with this, displaying a young, instinct-driven, shy but outgoing personality to the character. In this movie, Luigi was brought up by his older brother, and Mario is kind of a father figure to him, having raised him after the supposed death of their parents, also teaching him the family plumbing business. Most have complained that this diverted too much from the true Luigi of the video game, but I always thought it was a unique new take on the character, and I liked the change a lot. Both Hoskins and Leguizamo are great in this movie as 2 ordinary guys trying to make ends meet in their life, keeping good spirits and optimism throughout, and also being tough, brave, and adventurous during their quest to save Princess Daisy. The movie could not have done a better job making them as fun to watch as they are, and this is the main highlight of the film itself. Princess Daisy is played by Samantha Mathis. She's a university student who unexpectedly befriends the Marios, and this begins a slight romance between her and Luigi. Daisy is later kidnapped while on a night out with the brothers, and brought to a parallel dimension known as Dino Hatton, also known as the Mushroom Kingdom, where its inhabitants are evolved dinosaurs taking on a human appearance, the same way we had evolved from apes. Behind the kidnapping is King Koopa, played by Dennis Hopper, who brought Daisy back from the human world to reveal to her that she is their princess, and her assistance is required for him to merge the 2 dimensions and take over both worlds in a ruthless dictatorship. Both Dennis Hopper and Samantha Mathis do fine with the roles they are given. Dennis also once expressed his dislike of the film, stating that he only did it for money, but still carried out a very enthusiastic performance. And I really like Samantha as Daisy. Though the damsel in distress, she portrays a very quaint yet strong character, one with a lot of depth and who is coming to terms with her origins. She isn't just a helpless princess needing saving by the Marios, and even aids them in their fight against King Koopa. When making a movie like this with the classic Mario video games as its source material, can things stay exactly as they were in the game? That's a big no. In a live-action movie, there has to be differing elements to the story. You can't just have actors jumping on creatures and collecting coins and going from point A to point B. Converting that into a real-life situation has to be very tricky. So what exactly went right and what went wrong? I have a bit of a split opinion about this. On one hand, the notion of a live-action Super Mario Bros. Was a cool idea and made for an interesting concept. But on the other hand, with such little story from its source material, a movie didn't really need to be made. Or better yet, an accurate real-life portrayal of the world of Mario would be nearly impossible to get right. The biggest complaint about this movie is that it's nothing like the games. But to me, that excuse never worked. Because if it were like the games, the whole thing wouldn't make any kind of sense at all. I've also heard quite often before that a Mario movie would have been better as an animated story because then it's allowed to be more like the games. But in my opinion, an animated Mario movie would have caught nobody's interest, except maybe kids. There used to be an animated Mario Bros. Show based primarily on the third in the franchise, and though I enjoyed watching it as a kid, nobody really cared for it, and a lot even bashed it despite it being true to the story and environments of the games. Today it's a show that's hardly even remembered. So to answer the question of how to make an accurate Mario film, the best answer is that I have no idea. I really think that no matter what style came to pass for this movie, people would have panned it regardless for any of its necessary alterations to tell a legit story. It likely may have failed in any possible attempt since there is so little to work with. So in order to enjoy a movie like this, you have to set your mind a certain way. You need to remember the simple plot of the games and recognize that the movie included it. In this case, it very much did. You have a game franchise about two brothers traveling to another dimension to save a princess, and a live-action movie about two brothers traveling to another dimension to save a princess. That's pretty much all it needed to have. The movie did what it was set out to do, giving it a gritty, Blade Runner adventuristic style instead of taking the Mario Brothers to a goofy, cartoony world more like the games, which absolutely would not have worked. So I can see what the filmmakers are trying to do with it, and it's that kind of understanding that most people lack based on those with negative opinions. This movie was never meant to be some big hit. It was basically a, let's give this a try and see what people think of it kind of production. In truth, it doesn't really work that well. I recognize the stupidity of such a story, but that's kind of what the Mario franchise is. It never made any sense, but that didn't stop it from being fun. Same could be said about something like the Ninja Turtles or Bill and Ted. Stupid, but fun. And to me, Super Mario Bros. Was a very fun movie with a lot of heart. Bob Hoskins' son, Jack Hoskins, once made a statement that he always enjoyed the movie and was a little offended that it's considered the worst video game adaptation, even though he understands the reasons for it. He thought his father was awesome as Mario, and sorry that he didn't enjoy the experience of making it. I absolutely agree with Jack on this, and also think that it isn't the worst game adaptation. In my opinion, we have seen much worse. John Leguizamo himself also once recorded a message for the 20th anniversary screening of the film, saying he's glad that the movie still has life and is appreciated by its many fans. If you didn't like this movie, I definitely say give it another shot while taking my explanations into consideration. It was a film that was taken way too seriously because of how popular the games and the Mario characters are to old and new generations. Also, check out the Super Mario Bros. Archive website at smbmovie.com. There are lots of neat photos, information, merchandise, special features, and a large community of fans that have turned this film into a cult classic. So much so that High Demand has finally got the movie released on Blu-ray in 2014. One fond memory that still remains for me is the toys that came out after the movie's release in 1993. I wanted each one so bad, but the one I wanted most was the Luigi action figure, and of course our local KB toy store never had it. I remember all they ever had was Mario and Koopa, and my dad took me to the store many times to see if Luigi was ever available. which it eventually was, but it took them like 2 months to finally get it. But anyways, I hope this retrospective sheds some positive light on the film, because it's one that needs as much defense as it can get. It's probably the most underrated movie I know of, and it never deserved the brutal hate it has received over the years. Of course, this is all just my opinion, but it's one I've always wanted to express, and I hope it helps motivate people into giving Super Mario Bros. Another chance. As always, thank you for watching.
You want to stay?
Until we can get things settled here and I can get to know my father.
Oh, come on, Daisy, you know how I feel about you, right? I want to be with you.
I do too, but I can't.
She's trying to tell you she can't leave you until she knows where she belongs. And if you loved her, you'd understand that. And if I had any sense, I'd mind my own business.